Greetings, comrades. Given the vast majority of students who undertake VCE Psychology are indeed adolescents, this facet of the course should resonate. As a starting point, it's a good idea to reference the terminology used in the study design. So if we look at the very last KKA of Unit 4 Area Study Number 1, there's 5 things to kind of hone in on. Number 1 is we've got to be able to discuss what we mean by sleep hygiene. And then there's a reference to the adaptation to zeitgebers to improve sleep wake patterns and well-being. And it mentions 3. Number 1, daylight and blue light. 2, temperature. And 3, eating and drinking patterns. So if you see an exam question that references sleep hygiene, make sure you just start by briefly explaining what that looks like. So basically sleep-related behaviours and the environmental conditions that promote good sleep and daytime alertness. There's seemingly an infinite array of practices that can be employed to enhance sleep hygiene and promote that healthy sleep-wake cycle and the consequential optimal level of well-being. But again, the study design emphasis is on 3 practices. So again, using that key knowledge area of number 6 in Unit 4 Area Study Number 1, students need to be able to explain how zeitgebers, which are environmental cues, such as 1, light, 2, temperature, and 3, eating patterns, will basically help regulate the body's circadian rhythm, specifically the sleep-wake cycle. Light is the major zeitgeber, and if, for instance, in the morning we are exposed to a high level of light from the sun, then that will be detected by the back of the eye, the retina, which will convey a neural message to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, which in turn will direct the pineal gland to suppress melatonin, so we wake up. And when it's dark, the opposite will happen. The retina will detect an absence of light and therefore send a neural message to the SCN to direct the pineal gland to release melatonin so that we indeed feel sleepy. Now, a point of emphasis here is the visual light that we see from the sun has a frequency between 400 to 500 nanometers. And that is the same frequency as the blue light that we get from screens. And the brain can't discern between natural light from the sun and artificial light from screens. But either way, it's got a frequency somewhere between that 400 to 500 nanometer range. So in order to use blue light as a zeitgeber to enhance our cognition and our mood, 2 things need to happen. Number 1, we need to start the day early in the morning with a heap of exposure to blue light, ideally from the sun, and also in the early afternoon, and that will signal to the SCN to basically maintain a high level of alertness, arousal, etc. by signaling to the SCN. Second thing we need to be mindful of is at the back end of the day, we need to avoid blue light because again, the brain can't discern between natural light and that artificial light from screens. So therefore, we basically shut down all our exposure to screens. So therefore, we're adapting to our blue light exposure in order to promote good sleep hygiene and a healthy circadian sleep-wake cycle. The second zeitgeber that we need to adapt to is temperature. Now, at the back end of the day, in the early evening, our body temperature just starts to gradually decline. And this is a good thing in terms of our sleep hygiene because it signals to the SCN that it's night time. So in order to enhance this, we ideally are in an environment where it's cooling down. 18 degrees is the ballpark figure for an ideal temperature when we're just about ready to go to bed. But as long as there's a drop in temperature, because that will basically enhance the cooling of our body temperature and again, signal to the SCN that it's sleep time. Now, before we get into the third and final zeitgeber, eating and drinking times, just wanted to touch on peripheral body clocks. If you haven't covered peripheral body clocks, have no fear. They're not specifically mentioned in the key knowledge areas of Unit 4 Area Study Number 1, but They just provide a bit of additional context when we're talking about using eating and drinking times as a zeitgeber that will promote good sleep hygiene. So let's just emphasize the fact that the SCN is the central body clock, but we also have these peripheral means outside of, so these are basically organs, glands, muscles, etc., outside of the SCN. And these peripheral clocks basically have variations in their times of high activity, low activity, and they will signal the SCN to either promote, get ready for bed, stay asleep, or potentially get ready to wake up or stay awake. So 2 points of emphasis in terms of our eating and drinking habits. First one is consistency, because if we're consistent in terms of when we have our meals, brekkie, lunch, dinner, then our peripheral clocks, e.g. some of our digestive organs, then they will be synchronized with our central clock, the SCN, to basically maintain regularity in terms of our sleep-wake cycle. Now, if we're erratic in terms of our eating and drinking habits, in terms of the timing of our consumption, the volume of food, drink that we're eating, if we're having caffeine late in the day, etc., then that basically creates a misalignment between our peripheral clocks, e.g. the liver, and our central clock, the SCN, which can disrupt our sleep-wake cycle. So in terms of the timing of our meals, we need to avoid consumption late in the day, the last 3 to 4 hours before bed if practical, so that therefore the peripheral clocks are not becoming highly active, and therefore the peripheral clocks are no longer misaligned with the SCN, which is basically signaling to the pineal gland to start suppressing that melatonin so that we can go night-night.